In this video we'll build a clean and modern outdoor sofa using framing lumber. It measures 55 inches wide and 30 inches deep. It's a straightforward project resulting in a very useful couch to relax in outside. I made this video to accompany a very detailed plan on how to build this project. It's 11 pages long and it comes with a cut list, step-by-step instructions, scalable SVG files, etc. to make it exceptionally helpful if you want to build this project yourself. The plan is available on my website, link in the description below. An outdoor sofa is one of those things which can really be worth it to build yourself. I mean, have you seen what these things cost? You obviously need wood, either something nice and rot resistant like cedar or teak, if you can find it, or we can go more affordable and just use framing lumber. Just be prepared to finish it in some way to protect it from the elements. The other thing we need are cushions. I suppose you could skip cushions, but then you basically just have a bench and not a sofa. So here are the ones we got. I'll link them below. They are memory foam, so they kind of grow like a new mattress when they come out of the package. And they're standard size, measuring 24 by 24 inches for the bottom ones and 24 by 22 inches for the back ones. So the sofa is made up of 4 sections. We've got the seat, the back, and 2 pieces for the arms. These sections are all bolted together, so at any point you can disassemble them to move and easily assemble again. In terms of wood, we're going to need the approximate sizes of 2x4s, 4x4s, and 1x4s. Now you can either pick those up in those dimensions, or you can do what we did, use only 2x4s, but then glue and resaw. We ended up using 13 2x4s for this project, and at today's price of about $3.73 each, the cost for the wood is about $50. Now, the key if you're using 2x4s and you want it to look a bit more finished and less like framing lumber is to trim the wood slightly or plane it so you remove those rounded edges. This is true whether you're doing a glue up or resaw or keeping the 2x4 size intact. Then you get these crisp, nice corners and it looks much cleaner. Let's begin with making the seat part of the sofa. First, let's cut the pieces to size, and the cut list for all of these pieces are available in my plan, link in the description below. The seat is made up of a simple frame. First, we're starting with the 2x4 pieces, adding glue and nailing in place as the wood dries. Now for the seat boards, we're going to use thinner woods, or about 1x4s. So resawing here on the table saw. Obviously, you could use a bandsaw, however it's a little bit cleaner and faster to do it this way. The boards for the seats are simply glued down and then secured with nails as the glue dries. And for some extra support in the middle we have an additional piece. So we've got the seat, let's move on to the arms. These are the only pieces on the sofa that are utilizing 4x4s. So to make those, we're starting out with some cleaned up 2x4s with sharp edges, then gluing and clamping them together. And it's always nice to glue up several pieces at the same time using the same clamps. Then we also need to trim them to size. To connect these rather chunky pieces together, we're using dowels. 2 things are useful to have on hand when building with dowels. First, these little marking pins. Basically, you drill holes, then you put the pins in the holes and mark the other piece of wood. That way you know exactly where to drill on the other piece in order for everything to line up. Plus, they make for the most satisfying sound. The other useful tool is a doweling jig. This you clamp to both pieces of the wood and drill your holes, and then the holes will be drilled at the exact same distance and everything will line up. This is useful especially when you have cross pieces like the middle piece here that you want to connect. Now if you don't have these dowel tools, you can actually make your own, and I made a video about that a while back. I think dowels are neat. They are an invisible way to connect wood together that is simple and affordable. The only thing you have to keep in mind is the order of assembly. For example, here we're connecting the frame together as well as the middle support piece. Now you can't do the frame first and then add the support piece afterwards because it wouldn't fit. They all have to come together at the same time, as would be the case with any sort of tenons. When putting together the arm/leg section, one thing to pay attention to for this couch design is where exactly you're placing that middle section. That's the piece that the seat will be bolted to, so it directly impacts the height of the seat. We're positioning it at 13 inches from the bottom of the side pieces, and that will make for a final seat height with the cushions of 18 inches, which is a comfortable height for most people. Of course, there are lots of options in terms of joinery. Dowels work really well here. You could also use pocket screws. However, keep in mind, if you use pocket screws, make sure to plug the holes so you don't have any water getting trapped inside the wood, since this is for outdoor use. At the same time, if you're using regular screws, make sure to countersink first, and then you can add plugs to create a nice solid surface that's protected from moisture. So that's a nice chunky frame, and we need one more, so we have one for each side of the sofa.
What do you think, Darwin? He's so happy he got to be up here.
Okay, let's move on to the last section, the back piece. This section is made up of thinner pieces so as to leave a slightly lighter impression. Basically, we have a frame, the pieces are connected with bridle joints in the corners, and then we have the back support pieces which are connected with the dowels. So first of all, we need some thinner wood. The frame is a little bit thicker, about 1¼ inches, whereas the inset slats are thinner at about 5/8 inch. And we're going to trim the sides slightly to make the edges nice and sharp. So this section is all about preparing ahead of time. Preparing the mortises and tenons, preparing the holes for the dowels, and if you get everything right, it will line up beautifully into one solid section. As you can see, the frame pieces are overlapping in the corners. That's because of the bridle joint. If you were going for a different joint like dowels or pocket screws, you would cut the side pieces shorter so that they would fit inset. So, the bridle joint. To make this, we're using a tenoning jig that goes onto the table saw. It's basically like a sliding clamp that holds the wood just right, and then you make your cuts, and the height of the blade will determine how far into the wood you cut. So first of all, we mark out where the tenons and the mortises should go. Once you have the jig set up, you do one cut, then turn the piece around, do the cut again, and it will automatically be perfectly centered. And then you can repeat with all the pieces you need to cut. And here we're finalizing the height of the cuts. If you don't have a jig like this, you can definitely make your own. It's useful for a lot of things. The bridle is one of my favorite joints. I appreciate see-through joints, and you get the added benefit of strength. It's a very solid joint, plus it looks nice. And then it was all about planning out where the inset slats should be located so that they're evenly placed, and then of course where all the dowel holes need to go. Obviously, it's a good idea to do a dry fit to make sure you've got your cuts right and everything is fitting properly. Once you made your marks, it's easy enough to go through with the doweling jig and drill all the holes you need. You'd be pretty lost, however, without some sort of jig for this. So this needs to be repeated on both the top and the bottom frame pieces. And of course, we need the holes drilled on the ends of all the slats as well. Now the thing is, once you glue these in, they'll be capped by the frame. So none of these pieces will go anywhere, and the whole section will be reinforced and quite stable. And to soften the sides a little, we're using a tiny hand plane. Okay, so all the sections are assembled. Now we need to connect them together. They're only held in place with 3 bolts on each side, so 6 bolts total. We have 2 bolts connecting the arms to the seat. They should be about 4 inches long, so in total we need 4 of those. And then we have 1 bolt connecting the back to the arms, which needs to be about 7 inches long, so in total we need 2 of those. Of course, we also need accompanying washers and nuts.
The back is actually resting on the seat. Any weight coming down is actually resting on here, which in turn is resting on the legs.
First step is connecting the arms to the seat. This is quite simple because the middle support piece of the legs lines up perfectly with the seat. So it's important you get the position of the middle piece in the right place when you first make the legs. The frame of the seat and the middle piece of the arm sections are the same thickness, so all you need to do is line them up, drill holes and connect with bolts. You can see here we had some screws in just to hold everything in place while drilling the larger holes, but they can be removed now. What about the angle of the back? We decided to go for a 15-degree angle. That's pretty comfortable. It's not too upright nor too much leaning back. Now the way to accomplish that angle quite easily is to put the back onto the seat, so it's resting on it, butting it up flush. Then you make a mark 2 inches in on the arm, and that's where the back leans to. So you clamp it in place and then you can drill your holes. We also added some long screws to the arms just to reinforce everything a bit, and added plugs to the areas to clean it up a bit. In terms of drilling these large holes, you just want to make sure you're going in nice and straight. Once you're through, you'll have made a mark onto the back as well, and you can take it out and make a hole directly on there as well, going straight through, because you're going through the whole side. Then repeat on the other side before assembling. Now we used pretty long bolts, but 7-inch bolts going into the back would have been perfect, and 4-inch bolts going into the seat would have been ideal. Finally, the arms were a bit on the sharp side, so the edges needed to be rounded just a touch. Also cleaning up any plugs, as well as sanding and finishing. Okay, so remembering that part about the sections being held together by bolts, which means you can build everything in the workshop and then assemble on location, which in this case is my backyard.
Okay, so here we have our sections.
And once the holes are drilled, it's a simple puzzle of getting everything together.
I realized I had this word, these ones backwards. What's up, what's down? So what I need here is for this hole to line up with that hole, while having this guy be on the top and not on the bottom.
And if your bolts are on the long side, you can always make it work with extra washers. All in all, easy to assemble. As long as you get the holes lining up, it's very straightforward. So first we do the seat with the sides, and then slide down the back and attach with the bolts. And we were quite excited to see it all put together with the cushions.
So it had a coat of finish first, then assembled. Then I sanded it lightly, gonna give it a final coat now to protect it further. Now since this is framing lumber, obviously it needs to be protected, because otherwise it won't last. And I rather like the natural looking wood. Of course, with a finish like this, you do have to be on top of it if you want it to stay this color. So in an ideal world, you do this every year, you give it a light sanding and you give it a new coat. And that's just gonna keep it much better.
What do I mean with that? Well, in my experience, when using polyurethane, after about 1 year outside, the finish starts to peel. Now, if you're on top of it and give it a light sanding and put on a new coat, your work will be minimal. If you wait longer than a year, you'll have to sand much more and apply much more finish.
What I'm putting on right now is an oil spar, which I love to work with because it doesn't dry in 2 seconds. You get a really nice finish, and it is, you know, more durable as well. You can see the pieces for the arm are going like this, and then it's resting onto the legs going this way. So you have all the force coming down like this direction, making it very strong. In terms of the back here, back is actually resting onto the seat. It's not sitting behind it, it's actually sitting on it. So any weight going down is resting on here, making it much stronger. So all in all, a very practical project, I would say. A lot cheaper than going out and buying a couch already. And of course you can alter it to fit what you need.
Now, if you'd like to build your own cozy little outdoor sofa, don't forget I have a plan with all the cuts and step-by-step process and as an accompaniment to this video. And there's a link in the description to that. We've had this up now for a few days and it's everyone's favorite spot, Darwin included.
So thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below and I'll see you soon. What do you think, Darwin? Yeah.